less than $10,000, 3-bedroom home. Now, if we figure out that technology, the coolest thing is it's just then the raw inputs and how my home looks versus the home that Rob wants to print. It's the same cost, but they'll look very different. And it's just something that I think is on the horizon and something that we're gonna see certainly over the next 5 to 10 years. The thing that we can't do any of this is if we don't have enough energy. And certainly if we're dependent on overseas oil, if we're dependent on traditional fueling methods, this all falls apart, right? The earth can't handle more than 8 billion people or 9 or 10 billion people if we're doing all these things in traditional ways. So our next speaker up is gonna go right into energy and the future of energy. Justin Vandenbroeck to the stage. And there you go.
Alrighty. Thank you all. I'm very humbled to be here today among some pretty distinguished professionals in our community to speak to you about the future of energy, but I have to be honest with you. All I can think about right now is the future of sleep. I don't know if is there any parents in the room? Yeah, I'm so impressed by you. I have a 2-week-old child at home, so I haven't slept very much over the past 2 weeks, so I'm trying to do this, but we got this. Anyway, so first public dad joke. Anyways, so I've dedicated nearly the past decade of my life to the solar energy industry. I've seemed to have this unending appetite to learn as much as I possibly can, and it started off installing solar panels in Tallahassee for minimum wage as a college student. It then went all the way to California to do an internship on the manufacturing line of the oldest solar panel manufacturing plant in the country, working alongside folks who've been manufacturing panels that were going to outer space. I then jumped over to Washington, D.C. to do an internship with the Department of Energy because I want to understand how public policy shapes our markets. And then, thankfully, this industry has even taken me to East Africa, to India, to Nepal, to work in off-grid communities and work on refugee camps to help them access clean, reliable electricity to improve their basic human life. So it's been this never-ending joy of mine and passion, and I'm really happy to be here to present to you and share with you a few things that I think are really going to transform the future of energy. The first one being low-cost, renewable energy plus storage. The second one is the electrification of everything. And the third one is utility 2.0. So I want you to remember these 3 things, and we're going to dive into them. And why is this so important? We know that the current paradigm of how we produce, distribute, and sell electricity in our society is unsustainable. We can no longer continue to sacrifice public health, sacrifice our public lands and our environment for profits, right? We need to be more intentional about how we produce our electricity. And this project right here is really impactful for me. This is the first utility-scale solar farm I got the chance to work on in 2015. It's situated right next to a massive coal power plant in Colorado. What makes this so special to me is that this was the very first time in the history of our industry that a utility asked for proposals for new electricity from all sources, coal, gas, nuclear, wind, solar, whatever you have and you can bring to the table. And our company won with solar. We were able to produce electricity for this utility for the first time in our history from solar cheaper than any other source of electricity. As a matter of fact, this coal power plant, just 3 months ago, the utility announced that they're going to be shutting it down 11 years ahead of schedule. It was pretty amazing. And it's not just happening in Colorado and in California and out in the West in the more progressive states, but here in Florida, we are seeing record low pricing for solar energy, where our own utility, Orlando Utility Commission, recently signed an agreement to purchase electricity from a large-scale solar power plant cheaper than their existing coal plant up there on the northern part of the screen. And it begs the question, when is Orlando Utility Commission going to set their own retirement date, right? So we need to start asking these questions because we need to be joining our other utility friends out west. And just so you understand where we're going, it's important to know where we've been. So you can see all the way on the left right here, we have 2009, the prices of electricity. So this metric right here, levelized cost of electricity, is basically how much does it cost to build this power plant, and then over the life of that power plant, how much electricity can you generate? And that gives you your dollar per megawatt hour. Well, solar was $359 per megawatt hour, less than 10 years ago. And if you look right here on the right, solar is $50 a megawatt hour at the end of 2017, and wind is just below it at 45. And we're seeing this go even further down. So utilities and folks in the energy industry are scrambling because this is rapid change that many people weren't ready for. But electricity is not just cost. It has to be value. We have to assign value to electricity based on when it is generated and where it's generated. And so in this graph, this is basically a snapshot of a typical utility on, say, a summer day. And on the y-axis, what we have here is the amount of demand. On the x-axis, we have the time of the day. And in yellow is the demand of this profile, of the utility. So as we add more and more solar to the grid, say this is 2020, 2025, 2030, we have this phenomenon where we end up having excess electricity generated during the day when we don't need it. So what do we do with this electricity? Because every solar project you add to the grid, the closer you get to this excess production, and that means that utilities are going to have to shut down your solar power plant, and you're not going to make as much money off this power plant. So how do we shift this electricity to the mornings and to the evenings? And that's the key challenge that we're facing here. And there's a multitude of methods. There's multiple ways that you can store this electricity, and that's what's going to preserve the value of these large-scale solar projects. Whether it's taking that excess generation, running pumps to push water up into a reservoir, and then releasing that reservoir at night to spin turbines and generate electricity, called pumped hydro, that's one solution. Whether it is compressing gas, or using flywheel technology, or even batteries, which most people are familiar with, there's a multiple ways to get there, and I think it's important that we as an industry and as technology folks stay open-minded and start to look into the different methods and try to find solutions. I want to say though that probably one of the most beautiful things about this is we're not alone, right? We have the electric vehicle industry helping us along the way. By 2030, Bloomberg New Energy Finance predicts that 86% of new buses that are bought around the world are going to be electric. Just think about that. Right, in 12 years, 86%, the vast majority of new buses will be electric. So we're going to benefit from those cost declines as a solar industry and as the wind industry tries to take our intermittent resource and turn it into a firm product that we can offer throughout the day to our utility companies. And storage is not just for these large power plants. We have storage for our distribution system to help mitigate the cost of upgrading our infrastructure. We have it for resiliency in our communities where we can actually island off the grid during a hurricane and maintain our quality of life or maintain our critical infrastructures like police, firefighter, medics during hurricanes using solar and storage to do so. And even commercial businesses. It's a growing trend where we're seeing, especially out west, commercial businesses and residential clients are taking solar plus storage to play a role in their cost savings. And so with this low-cost renewable energy, there's another concept that's important that you grasp, and that's the electrification of everything. It's becoming one of the new buzzwords. A lot of folks would say smart grid. Now electrification of everything is something that folks have to be ready for. And what we're trying to do is, if we want to reach these ambitious targets, like the Paris Climate Accord, or 100% renewable energy, or lowering our CO2 emissions, we need to replace every single internal combustion engine, or gas, or coal, or a natural gas plant that's in our communities, and replace it with electric devices. So whether it's heat pumps to heat our water in our own community, implementing electric vehicles, it's imperative that we power with renewable energy electric devices so we can lower our carbon emissions. And this is this is really starting to become a challenge, but also an opportunity for our utilities. Because maybe 30 years ago, all you cared about is that you had reliable and affordable electricity. That's all you cared about with your utility. You're like, I want the lights on. I certainly want the lights on right now, and I definitely want them off to go to sleep when I finish this. But now we have this trend towards consumer centricity, where utilities can no longer just generate electricity, transmit it, distribute, and sell it, and that's it. That's the only business model. Consumers want two-way communication. They want electric vehicle charging stations at their home. They want solar on their roof. They want batteries in their homes during power outages. They want to be able to go on their iPhone and control their thermostat and turn it down because they say, oh, I left the house, I'm not going to be back till 8. Let me turn it down so I save money. So utilities are saying, wait, all this is happening on the edge of the grid with my consumers. How do I add this into my services as a company? And so you're seeing a rapid shift in mind where they're starting to really think about consumers and even our own utility, Orlando Utility Commission. If you're a commercial business right now and you want an electric vehicle charging station, it's typically about $10,000. Well, OUC is financing it over a 7-year period for our commercial businesses to help them be able to provide a new service to their customers. Also, they have a community solar farm now. So if you live in an apartment, multifamily, a townhouse, or you have a home with a huge oak tree that's shading it, and you can't put solar on your roof, you can't access solar, the utility is now providing an offering that you can subscribe to their solar and be able to have it as your primary fuel source. And then also they're using purchasing power. So OUC has 80 to 100,000 customers. They're leveraging this large customer base, working with regional solar installers to lower the cost of installed solar on their home, saying, hey, solar company, if we give you access to 80,000 leads, how low can you install solar on their homes, right? They're using purchase power to lower the cost, just like Costco. And so these are new services that are not just happening in California, they're happening here in our own community. I find this slide to be absolutely fascinating for a multitude of reasons. You probably wouldn't guess it, but this wind farm is owned by one of the world's largest oil and gas companies, formerly called Statoil. They actually just went through a rebrand a few months ago and renamed themselves Equinor. They realized they weren't getting much talent. People weren't trying to come to an oil company. And they were trying to put their dollars into clean energy, and they knew with their old name they couldn't make it happen. But, you know, with all due respect to the oil industry, this is a super complex thing. Offshore drilling is incredibly complex. So now we have these companies in the oil and gas industry that are leveraging their acumen to build offshore wind 30 kilometers off the coast and send that electricity to communities in England and in Europe, and it's a growing trend. It's actually quite more productive out there where the wind blows. And it's not just this firm right here. You have the 5th, 6th, and 7th largest oil and gas companies, BP, Shell, and Total, all making significant investments. In 2017, there's over $1 billion invested by oil and gas companies in renewable energy companies, right? So think about it, they don't want to get left behind. BP made a $200 million acquisition of one of the leading solar development companies. Shell also made a $200 million acquisition. BP acquired Europe's largest electric vehicle charging network company that has over 50,000 electric vehicle charging stations throughout Europe because they realized that just owning gas stations is not going to get them where they need to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So our oil and gas super majors are realizing that the utility 2.0 includes them. They're not just going to be upstream extracting oil. So I want to kind of close this on something that's near and dear to my heart after spending many months in villages in East Africa and India and working with communities that are the most vulnerable to climate change and to access to electricity. You know, I spent a month in Uganda in this one village, and like the way that we produced electricity or produced light at night to eat was a kerosene candle. and my eyes would just be burning, like tears coming down. It hurt so bad, and the fumes were just brutal. And believe it or not, there's over 1.1 billion people on this planet who don't have access to electricity. So what we do in our community and in our nation to drive forward low-cost renewable energy and electrify everything and create a utility model of the future, it's going to play an incredible role in these communities, because there's no faster way to electrify those furthest from the grid by bringing solar panels, batteries, and LED lights. You can't run a transmission line as fast as you can go there in a vehicle. So as you all look into this field and you think about the future of energy, I encourage you to participate. If you have solutions that you want to bring to the table, I encourage you to do so. The opportunities are limitless. So thank you very much.